Hello, good afternoon for us here in the East Coast, but also around the world. My name is Matthew Porcelli. I am the North American Hub President of the Institute of Strategic Risk Management. I am joined here by a man who really needs no introduction, a really great friend, colleague, and mentor, Mr. Michael Gips, what became a fellow with the I.S.R.M. In the beginning of March 2026. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be a fellow of the Institute.
Absolutely. And actually, Mike and I is actually Mike's in New York right now. And it's interesting that Mike and I, not too long, actually, believe it or not, I think that was 2 years ago. Talk about how time flies. We were with the Australia and New Zealand hub president, Gav Schneider. And I believe Chris Stitt was with us as well, who's also a
Yes.
fellow of the ISRM. And Mike Edgerton, who was one of my past vice chairs of the New York chapter. We were at for World Trade Center, I believe it was. We had a Brazilian's presentation. So it's amazing how we all come back full circle. So
What's funny is that I since went to work for Kroll, whose office is at One World Trade Center. So I'm not in out of the New York office, but I go up to New York fairly regularly. So I sometimes go to the World Trade Center. So yeah, we're all kind of, back to, back to that area. So
you
yeah.
probably saw me waving to you from my side of Jersey City. So
Yeah, that's the affordable side,
yeah.
the more affordable side. Let's just say
Very,
that.
very true,
Yeah.
Mike. Very true. And also, too, besides Mike and I both being fellows of the ISRM, which we're going to go into in a little bit as well, Mike and I are also members of the Life Safety Alliance. Mike is actually the president and founder of the Life Safety Alliance. I'm the secretary of the Life Safety Alliance, and actually, the ISRM is one of the strategic partners of the Life Safety Alliance as well. Nowadays, especially when you're dealing with security and risk, you can't really draw too many lines in the sand. Risk does not play, and aggressors do not play fair with people like us. So we have to cross pollinate, we have to cross collaborate with each other. So the ISRM, the LSA, and other security membership organizations cannot afford to be siloed in. They have to be able to cross collaborate. And that's what the LSA and the ISRM are doing. So the fellows, and hence this is episode 5 of Fellow to Fellow podcast that we have put together, where we're bringing together people like Mike, just to see, again, he's got a wealth of knowledge. Is just what doesn't do him justice. Really is like, and again, as anybody that I interview on this Fellow to Fellow podcast, what attracted you, Mike, to the ISRM and to really become a fellow? Because it's not just putting post nominals after a name. I mean, you see some LinkedIn post nominals that are more than 26 letters. But what
Right.
really attracted you, Mike?
They run through the alphabet and then they have to start over again.
Yeah.
I have plenty of post nominals, but I took them off LinkedIn a couple of years ago because it started to look ridiculous. And I saw other people with, if their name was 10 letters and their post nominals were 100 letters. And it was like, okay, this is
Well, it's like me.
silly.
I caught my limit. I think after, I think it was after the fellowship with the ISRM. I think that's where I kind of cut it off there.
So, as to how I got involved in ISRM, I've known David Rubens and about his organization for several years, and he was one of the leaders in moving security beyond security to, sort of general, more inclusive and expansive risk management, which is really what we are, risk managers over. I know he brings in a lot of people from different fields, so I don't want to try to say that he was ever constrained by physical security, but he's bringing more people from the world of risk together to look across those divides, across those industries, across domains. And he what was interesting about him is he always had an academic foundation behind him. Everything he said was backed up with research and uh, with intellectual rigor. And I kind of watched it from afar for a while. And then I became colleagues with Gav Schneider, who you mentioned, and Brazilians, and they operate in the same universe. They're close comrades, allies. Um, they collaborate on thought leadership, and even though they're not always in lockstep together. They're very complementary. And as you said, Gav is, I believe, the head of Australia New Zealand branch of ISRM. And since Gav and I, Dr. Schneider and I, have talked risk a lot, David Rubens came up, ISRM, and of course, you are a very prominent ISRM fellow and chair or whatever the term is of this region. And everyone he mentioned was like, oh yeah, those are very well respected thought leaders, business leaders, people who want to advance knowledge, people who want to cross the silos or the divides or the domains. And so the more I saw who was involved, and especially when, as you said, we are uh, officers in the Life Safety Alliance, when they expressed interest in becoming a partner, I said, well, reciprocity, right? Let me look into ISRM. There are already great people in it. I know their mission is good. I know the academic rigor is strong, and I put in for a fellow, and fortunately, the powers that be smiled down on me and granted it. So
I was going to
I'm
say it
looking,
would be
yeah,
foolish not to have admitted you. I
I
would say,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah, and
So
yeah. Oh, go
no,
ahead,
no,
Mike.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think what I love the most about the fellowship is that we all have different backgrounds and disciplines. You have a law degree too, which I know most people may not know about you, but you have a Juris Doctorate, and I mean my expertise. I mean you have a huge diversity of expertise. Like mine is more in the private contract security sector. So we're like a what is it, a microcosm or melting pot of security practitioners, but they're run concurrent with risk, and I think that's the purpose. And I've always said this, no matter I haven't always said this actually. I started to say this after COVID, that you can't draw lines on a map anymore. I mean, it's risk is going to find you no matter where you go. And I believe too, and again, we'll use it synonymously because um, it's all about the communication. Like I've seen many organizations, obviously not to name drop, but there are a lot of, let's say, pretending organizations that call themselves strategic partners, let's just say, and then they don't do anything after that. They collect logos. I know for the ISRM and LSA, we had our inaugural event at GSX in New Orleans that ASIS puts on every year. They have this year was in New Orleans. We're going to do coming up in Atlanta for GSX. We're going to be having another ISRM LSA networking event. We'll have it, very casual, fellows, members, non-members. And again, it's all about the networking. I have a friend of mine who, unfortunately, is no longer with us. He had a very powerful adage. It's who you know that gets you the job. It's what you know that keeps it, and that's what it's all about. I mean, do you agree, Mike? I mean, networking. I mean, and again, you said academics too. Like Dr. David Rubens. Again, I couldn't agree more. Very prominent, very smart. He coined the term pracademics, is what he called it. But I'm assuming you concur with me with regards to the networking. It's
Yeah, yeah,
invaluable.
right. It's who you know to get the job. It's what you know to keep the job, and it's how you work with people, how you develop people, how you make them feel that determines how far you go in your job,
Very true.
right? And really, for me, my biggest goal, especially in my part of a career, is I've done a lot of things and worked with a lot of people and had a lot of different interesting experiences. Now, even though I still have a lot of things I want to do and a lot of organizations I want to help, my focus is primarily on developing new talent, bringing up new leadership, succession planning, um, inculcating young people in the risk industry or adjacent industries in risk leadership and what that entails. So I've often said, I hope it's not a cliche now, that what I want to do is leave the risk profession a better place than how I found it. And that's by, lifting up people and bringing people up who are more capable, smarter, experienced than I am to move it forward. So um, that's that's what I'm focused on now.
And that's like I said, and that's what makes you just really a beacon of inspiration, Mike, is because you want to pay it forward. You're not doing it based on, again, you don't have to reach out to people. People reach out to you, for that guidance, Hence that's how we found each other. And again, I cannot thank you and be more blessed enough for that encounter. Because when it comes to as a person of faith, it's you always get back, more than your fair share than what you give. But and a lot
You
of people don't realize, I got to be honest with you, kind of, switching up a little bit of pace here. People that are, hopefully, we got a good base here, people watching or listening to this. Some people, and again, you mentioned the young folks transitioning. Some people don't know what a fellowship is. Um, Honestly, I guarantee the first time my kids, and I'm not kidding, heard fellowship, the first thing that went to their mind was Lord of the Rings. And
well,
I'm
it
not
makes
kidding.
sense.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I tried. They asked, Dad, what's a fellowship? And I said, no, it's not there's nothing to do with Frodo Baggins and Mount Doom or anything like that. Um, but how do you, and again, this is just, where do you see the distinction between a member of the ISRM, which again, that's nothing. I'm not saying that's beneath, but I'm just saying a member of the ISRM and a fellow, because I think everybody has their own interpretation of that.
My expectation of a fellow, and this may just be totally out of my head, out of whole cloth, is that they add to the academic, add to the literature, they advance knowledge, they contribute research, they move the profession ahead through thought leadership. That's what I see a fellow as being. It's a responsibility. You're to be given a title of fellow means that you're entrusted by the granting institution to be a representative and a representative of knowledge and action. So if I find that being, you know, nominated or being granted a fellowship is a very high honor because you are representing that institution academically um, and as a leader. That's what it means to me.
Absolutely. And the thing is, and one thing that I want to make sure that those listening is that um, to this and the other episodes is that a fellowship, it's not, you don't have to give up your entire work life to do it. I mean, I mean, I'm speaking rhetorically here, Mike, but I'm saying you, meaning all the fellows that the ISRM have. I mean, you may have knowledge and experience to share that you don't even realize that you have. One thing that we like to tell all the fellows is that there are, regardless geographically where you live or your acumen or discipline, there's always something to bring to the table. I mean, now that we're in a hybrid lifestyle with virtual, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, including myself, prefer the in-person interaction, as I'm sure you do too, Mike. It's more um, it's more available and more out there. And I think as well too, it's just like this fellow to fellow. Perfect example. I don't like to say I, but when I created this fellow to fellow, when I had the inception to put the fellow to fellow podcast together, again, the name just came to me. It's not just because it's got to be guys. I did have female. I'm going to have a more female guests as well, fellows as well. But the whole point of this is that this is my contribution from as a fellow to the fellow to get the insights of how they feel, that how does the risk field impact them, and what does being a fellow mean to them. So it could manifest in another form to somebody else as well. Case in point,
Absolutely.
we have, you and I being Americans, we have a lot of big events coming up here in the States. Not only the 250th anniversary of the of our country, of our country's birthday, but also too the FIFA World Cup is coming through here.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
we're gonna put on our risk hats as well because um I know like you being in the DC metro area, I guess just like everybody says I'm in the New York area, even though I live in New Jersey. But
Right.
um what do you forecast? I mean, do you feel too the risk level is gonna be high? Because I know I sure as hell feel the risk level is gonna be high.
Well, I have particular insight because I recently published an article for Police One, which is a major online police publication, on how police are securing the World Cup. Home DHS. I was fortunate enough to talk to Andrew Giuliani, who's head of the World Cup task force, and folks leadership in New Jersey State Police and other law enforcement groups, and even private sector. Talked to the chief of security for FIFA World Cup
Hmm.
himself, and partners. And yeah, I have a pretty good sense of what they're concerned about. Um, and they have right. They have they're not making things up. They're not, they're appropriately concerned about, as you said, there's a very big uh, uh, surface area there. So the World Cup is happening in three different countries. There's going to be a lot of cross-border traffic, right? It's happening at stadiums all over United States, Canada, Mexico, traveling fans, teams, and there are people on, there are fans who are on no travel lists. That traditionally soccer or football, as you want to call it, there there have been issues with fans, um, over exuberant fans.
Hmm.
There, as opposed,
Inebriated fans, so
yeah, with stadium security, in these stadiums, they're used to seeing baseball or football, and most of the people are season ticket holders, and they know where they're going, and even though they're rowdy, they do the same things. They tailgate, they go to where, then they're pretty predictable. But with all these different fan bases and fiercely competing fan bases, um, and everybody sort of getting bottled up maybe on the same train platform or in the same hotel, they're really thinking through all the different threat vectors and all the different conflict areas. And of course, one of the big things is drone attacks,
right.
coordinated drone attacks. That's with all these events happening with around crowded stadiums,
No.
um, and so yes, I think the private sector and public sector are working pretty well on this. I have particular insight on what they're doing. It's a huge risk. Uh, there's huge risk exposure because in the United States alone, it goes from Boston to Seattle to, I think, Miami, and it goes down to Monterey and Mexico City and Vancouver. You know, there's and then there's got to be learnings, on the fly, right? So what happens in Vancouver, if there's an attack there or there's some sort of incident or some sort of risk that pops up, they have to know about that at MetLife Stadium, in New
Mhm.
Jersey. They have to know about that in the stadium in Monterey or in Mexico City or wherever it may be, right? So the communication is key, the intelligence sharing, the platforms even that they use to share information, and then even with all the language issues, like people are coming from countless countries. It's bigger than it used to be. What, 32 teams, and now there's
Yeah,
48
I
or
think it's a little bit
something.
more. Yeah.
Right. So now there's more teams, there's more
Yeah.
people, and you know there's there may be games where like Iran plays Egypt, or something,
Right, right.
or you know, there are places that at least the fans are hostile to the other fans. So there's all sorts
Yeah,
of issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, and plus you have not only the domestic issues, but also, you got everything from the delinquent, like the way I look at it from a frontline perspective, you have the delinquent issues, but then you also have everything from an operational issue, trying to get all those, and again, I'm coming from a contract security management standpoint, trying to get all those frontline essential employees, security officers, vendors in to that location on time and so forth, have backups for them because you know that there's going to be people that are either will call out or get held up or have to be sent, whatever the case is. And again, there's contingency planning. And I know this is something that I know in the ISRM we've done it. I know Dr. David Rubens he has a lot of level. I've taken the level 4, 5, and 6 program. He does a really great job with strategic crisis management. And I remember one of the biggest things, and you mentioned it too, Mike, was clear and concise communication. And there's no such. I tell you the truth, just like the risk cannot be 100% mitigated. Not to be pessimistic, or not really pessimistic, not to be crotchety in my old age of 41, but I don't think there's such a thing as clear and concise communication. I think amongst maybe one or two people, but it's like that game telephone they used to play when you were a kid.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
start with one message and then you make it down the line and it's a completely different message. I agree with you. And I think that whomever is leading those teams, um, no pun intended, I mean the security teams, whether it be for the FIFA World Cup, for you got everything that's going on with the fireworks going all the way up, up up basically from the Hudson to the Potomac, you're going to have everybody, everybody from, let's just say, your CSO even to your chief risk officer, if your organization has one in the C-suite, all the way to your frontline security management, and also the cross pollination of information has to be there. But also too, you can't hoard it to yourself, and I can't say that enough. I think there's a lot of, and I'm assuming I can bet you concur with me. Um, there's like a safety blanket to like hold this information. And one of the things that the ISRM, I know I learned from it, was urban resilience. And I preach that a lot because I'm a huge proponent of um, making the connections. I mean, other companies call it, or no, excuse me, other disciplines call it something different, but as far as like making those connections with your local I mean, infrastructures, security and whatnot, they do this, but to connect with your local vendor, local supermarket, local, even the Walmarts. Like I remember I was reading an article for during Hurricane Katrina, they had a one of the survivors or the entities said that they got a better reaction time from from Walmart than they did from the government. Which again, not to point fingers, but no, I mean, again, like I said, you work with what you can ahead. That's the whole point. It's not a blame game. It's who
yeah,
you can work ahead of time. It's all about preparedness, right? I mean, because
exactly. And we in the private sector, we always think about what we can do. And, it's important to communicate with emergency officials, law enforcement, other authorities, public safety. And, having been in the police environment, and, I, I'm on a board of that of an association that oversees police training. And the police often forget about the private sector. It's almost like, or it's sort of an afterthought. And everyone does the same. You kind of focus on what your thing is. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh them. Let's get them into. Let's get the intelligence people, and let's get the law enforcement. Let's get private security. Let's get blah blah blah. So I see that disconnect, but I also see that we're each coming up in each other's conversations more often. Like it doesn't take an outlier to say, hey, what about private security? What about our law enforcement partners? It's and I mean, I've been in this field for a long time, more than 30 years, and it wasn't always like that.
no,
It
well,
was, we were like an afterthought. This when, with 9/11, um, there was, and the first responders rightly were praised and as heroes, and they rushed to a, building that was collapsing, burning, and they, you know, they gave up their lives to save people, firemen, police, etc. But what wasn't said was that the first responders, they were really private security. They're already there, right? And they didn't leave the building, right? They
Well,
were
that's
helping
they're
people down.
contracted to
Yeah,
stay there, and that's the thing. Even
exactly.
and I think we all, you, myself, and I'm not saying like people that aren't, because a lot of people sometimes tend to forget other essential personnel, and I always say that when you're going to get your intelligence, like well, going back to what you said about with the World Trade Center, you have, again, something clicks, like the human instinct. And I know this, I'd have to ask Dr. Gav Schneider on this, because I know this is more his specialty too, is that, how like people like us, we're in the industry, we see somebody in duress, as long as the area is safe enough, we're going to run and aid that individual, when others will run the other way. I mean, obviously, if we hear gunfire, we're not gonna, we're not the Secret Service. We're not gonna jump on them. But my whole point is we have that neurotransmitter because we have the knowledge and so forth. But I like to say too is that there's other resources that you'd mentioned with law enforcement. And again, you and I are in unison on this with the LSA, with the ISRM. We work with or have worked with a lot of current and of transitioning law enforcement and respect them to the highest regard. I know we both do. If you don't mind me speaking for you.
No, you're right.
And
Please do.
but I agree. I have seen it firsthand of the afterthought. Oh, you're just a guard. Get out of, you're in our way. But I will, challenge that with, well, not what you said, but just that mindset. Who knows that building better than the security, the cleaning staff, the engineering, anybody who's there, the employees that are there, like most time of the day. That's where your intel comes from. Just like the Uniform Crime Report, the UCR that the FBI puts out every year that they collect from the police departments, and they publish. I believe it is still published. I believe,
Yeah,
if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. That's like your own little UCR for your neighbor, for your building, because a lot of security companies, they do their incident reports and they catalog them. I mean, a lot of it's done on computers now, so a metrics could be available and so forth, and that's how you can strategically um, plan, talk to your clients, and so forth. But yeah, that's I think that the time of the macho hero Lone Ranger is, well, I mean, unfortunately, it can always be prevalent because the human mind is very hard to predict. But I think it's imperative with the like, we have organizations like the ISRM, like the LSA, and so forth that have these certain. I like to say we're plucked and are, I'm not saying like we're like the super geniuses, but we're those thought leaders that come together and try to do our best to help the common good, and that's just what we are.
I agree. Very,
And,
very much so.
yeah, but also too, because I know we have a couple minutes left. I want to say that if you haven't done so already, Mike has amongst a lot of great publications, but one book that just recently came out. It's not, and Mike, again, if you don't have Mike as a connection on LinkedIn, um, that's not a you better connect with him on LinkedIn. I was about to say that's not an option. That's all I'm telling you. And that's not a
I
threat, that's
welcome
just
it.
not an option.
Yeah,
Please connect with Mike on LinkedIn. But it's not in the manual, Real World Leadership for Security and Risk. Um, it's an amazing book. I'm
thank you.
actually I still have to get through the last actually quarter of it. Just life in general has been a crazy for me, but again, Mike, it's great, and I humbly thank you as well for adding me in that. That was very,
It's
very
well
nice of you.
deserved.
No, well, thank
Nobody
you.
in nobody in the book is gratuitously put in there. Everybody, there's a lesson, there's their experience, there's insight, there's example, um, and you are emblematic of several of those. So
Well, I
pleased to have
thank
you in there.
well, thank you again, sir. I much appreciate that. And also too, if you are in Washington D.C. on May the 7th, Mike and I and Chris Stitt, who is also a fellow with the ISRM, will be speaking at
And a
Align.
member of LSA.
Very good. See, I
Yep.
thank you, Mike. See, I'm telling you, if I'm 41 going on 90, I'm losing it. 40,
Well, I won't even
I,
go into my age, so
you're
no.
27. No one, but yes, and a
Right.
member of LSA. Yeah, see, we're all cross-pollinated. We're all part of this. We're all part of the same team. The three of us are going to be speaking at the Managed Security Service Forum that Phelan Rowe. I'm sure you all know him. Uh, they're going to be having an event, a panel, in-person panel conference at the Fannie Mae headquarters building in Washington, D.C. on May 7th. So we'll be there if you're in DC at that time. Make sure you register. We'll be putting it out on LinkedIn. Mike, thank you so much for coming on this episode of Fellow to Fellow. Always a pleasure seeing you, my friend, and I will be seeing you soon in DC.
Thank you. And I just want to say it was a pleasure. And I referenced, Gav Schneider as Dr. Schneider, and I fear that I didn't reference Dr. Rubens, David Rubens, as Dr. David Rubens. So I'd like to atone for that faux pas right now.
Did
And they're both
you hear that, David?
fine folks, yeah, who
Oh, they
are
are.
have their advanced degrees and are doctors. So
Absolutely. But all right, everybody. Well, take care, be safe, and we'll talk again soon. Take care. Bye.
thank you.
Bye.